The executive lounge felt like a fortress as I sat there watching Alexander Grant dominate the conversation. His tailored Italian suit and carefully maintained silver temples projected authority, while his patronizing smile revealed exactly how he viewed me, the inexperienced daughter who needed to be eased out of the company. "The numbers tell a clear story," he said, tapping his Mont Blanc pen against the quarterly report. "Since Martin's stroke 3 months ago, investor confidence has fallen 18%. The board is concerned about Nova's leadership transition. My name is Elena Novak, and 3 months ago my father suffered a debilitating stroke. Today, his oldest friend and company COO was attempting to strip me of my inheritance. Our shareholders require stability," Alexander continued, his voice a perfect blend of regret and determination. "They're uncomfortable with, let's be frank here, a 29-year-old art history major suddenly controlling a majority stake in a leading AI research company." The other executives shifted uncomfortably in their ergonomic chairs. They'd known me for years as Martin Novak's daughter, the woman who organized the company's charity auctions and appeared in family photos on my father's desk. The woman who, as far as they were concerned, had no technical knowledge, no business acumen, and no right to lead a company at the forefront of artificial intelligence. If only they knew. "Elena," Alexander leaned forward, my name sounding foreign in his mouth. "Your father would want Nova Industries to thrive. My proposal is quite generous. We'll purchase your shares at 15% above market value. You keep the family estate, the investment portfolio, maintain your lifestyle, but allow those of us who understand this industry to guide the company forward." I examined the proposal document before me, maintaining a carefully neutral expression. The generous offer would indeed leave me wealthy, but it would hand Alexander complete control of Nova Industries, the company my father and I had built from nothing. "And if I decline?" I asked quietly. Alexander's smile remained fixed, but his eyes hardened. "Then I'll be forced to call for a confidence vote. The board stands with me. They recognize you lack the qualifications to make decisions about advanced neural networks and machine learning frameworks." "I see." I closed the folder containing his buyout offer and asked, "What about Project Lazarus?" The room went silent. Project Lazarus was Nova's most closely guarded initiative, a revolutionary approach to human-AI interaction that could transform everything from healthcare to education. As far as the industry knew, it was my father's final breakthrough, still in development under Alexander's supervision. Alexander's confidence wavered momentarily. "Project Lazarus continues on schedule." "Really?" I raised an eyebrow. "So you understand the modifications I made to the neural mapping protocols last month? The ones that improved response accuracy by 36%. His expression went blank. Around the table, board members began exchanging confused glances. "What modifications?" Alexander demanded. "The original architecture had fundamental limitations," I stated calmly. "It couldn't process emotional nuance effectively. The revised framework I implemented allows for contextual understanding while maintaining computational efficiency." The whispers grew louder as Alexander's complexion reddened. "You expect us to believe you understand neural network architecture? You studied art history at Brown." I smiled, thinking about the past 6 years, the late nights working alongside my father, designing algorithms, solving problems that had confounded the field's leading experts. About our decision to keep my involvement confidential, knowing how the tech world would react to a young female developer, especially one related to the CEO. "Actually," I said, standing up and walking to the room's central terminal, "I've been working in AI development longer than most of your senior team, Alexander. I just did it under a different name." I typed rapidly, accessing a secure server. The wall screen filled with code, the core architecture of Project Lazarus. "This coding structure looks familiar, doesn't it?" I asked the executives. "Remarkably similar to the work of Vega, wouldn't you say?" The effect was immediate. Everyone in the industry knew Vega, the reclusive programming prodigy whose innovations had driven Nova's meteoric rise over the past 6 years. The genius who never appeared in public, never gave interviews, communicating only through academic papers and technical documentation. "That's impossible," Alexander spluttered. "Vega is me," I said simply. "Elena Novak Vega. My father and I decided early on that my work would be judged more fairly if people didn't know I was his daughter. So we created a persona, the brilliant developer who collaborated with Nova's founder. I displayed more files on the screen, years of development logs, correspondence between my father and me discussing technical details, video recordings of us working together in our home lab. My father wasn't just my parent. I continued, my voice firm despite the emotion threatening to break through. He was my mentor and collaborator. We built this company together. The only difference is he did it publicly while I worked behind the scenes. The board members were now examining their tablets where I had just sent comprehensive documentation of my work. Alexander looked as if he'd been struck. "This is some kind of manipulation," he said weakly, "a desperate ploy. Would you like me to explain exactly how the emotional context mapping functions work?" I offered. "Or perhaps you prefer to discuss the conversational inference engine I designed for our medical diagnostic division, the one you've been claiming to oversee these past 3 months." The next hour in the executive lounge was unlike anything anyone present had experienced. I walked them through Lazarus's architecture, explaining complex AI concepts with the ease of someone who had spent years immersed in the field. With each explanation, each technical detail I elaborated on, Alexander's face grew paler. "But the patents," he finally interrupted, grasping for any thread. "They're all in Martin's name." I pulled up another document. "Actually, they're jointly held. Dad insisted on it, though I wanted to keep using the Vega pseudonym." I smiled slightly at the memory. He said someday the world would need to know the truth. Dr. Liang, our head of research, leaned forward with growing excitement. "The contextual processing framework, that was you. The one that solved our inference problems." I nodded. My father excelled at hardware integration, but software architecture was my strength. We complemented each other perfectly. "That's why he never fully explained certain systems," Dr. Liang said, realization dawning on his face. "He always referred us to Vega's technical documentation." "Because I wrote it," I confirmed. "Dad and I had an arrangement. He managed the public face of the company, the investor relations, the partnerships. I focused on development, on solving the technical problems that kept us ahead of our competitors." Alexander had remained uncharacteristically silent, his eyes darting between me and his tablet as he desperately searched for a way to undermine my revelation. "Even if this is true," he finally said, "running a tech company requires more than just technical knowledge. It demands business strategy, leadership qualities." "You mean like the qualities I used to secure our partnership with Hirana Robotics?" I interrupted. "The deal I negotiated while using the Vega identity." More murmurs around the table. The Hirana partnership had been transformative, a $250 million collaboration negotiated entirely through digital channels with the mysterious Vega. "That's right," I continued. "I handled most of our key strategic partnerships. The partners actually preferred dealing with Vega. They said they'd never encountered someone who understood both the technical and commercial implications so thoroughly." I displayed a new slide showing Nova's growth trajectory over the past 6 years. Every major breakthrough, every significant advancement had emerged after Vega joined the company after I began working with my father. "This is ridiculous," Alexander snapped, finally losing his composure. "You expect us to believe that all this time, while you were playing the dutiful daughter at company events, you were secretly a programming prodigy." "No," I said calmly. "I expect you to examine the evidence before you and make a rational decision about what's best for Nova Industries." I turned to address the entire board. "I understand your concerns about leadership, but ask yourselves, who truly knows Nova's technology? Who understands its potential and how to realize it? The person who created our core innovations or the person who's been trying to take credit for them?" The executives exchanged glances. Dr. Liang cleared his throat. "Ms. Novak, Elena, why reveal this now? Why not continue as Vega?" I thought about my father, about our conversations about the future of technology and the company we built together. "Because my father was right," I said. "The world needs to know that innovation doesn't conform to preconceptions. That breakthrough ideas can come from anyone, regardless of their age, gender, or whether they fit the tech industry's stereotype of what a genius should look like." I displayed one final document, the last email my father had sent me just days before his stroke. "My brilliant Alina, never let anyone define your capabilities. If anything happens to me, don't remain in the shadows. Show them who you really are." Show them what we've built together. All my love, Dad. I spent 6 years hiding my true identity, I said quietly. I won't do it anymore. This company needs leadership that understands both its technology and its vision. I am that leader, whether you choose to accept that or not. Alexander stood abruptly. This is all very dramatic, but it doesn't change the fact that I have the board's support. I moved to call for an immediate vote on my proposal to purchase Elena's shares. I smiled. Actually, Alexander, I don't think you do have the board's support. Not anymore. Dr. Lang was already shaking his head. Not after this revelation. Elena, or Vega, has been the driving force behind every major advancement we've made. We'd be fools to let her go. Other board members nodded in agreement. Alexander looked around the room, watching his carefully constructed plan disintegrate. This isn't over, he said, gathering his materials. I'll have the legal team review everything. If there's even a hint of fabrication, of backdated documents or falsified records, you'll find everything in perfect order, I interrupted. My father and I were meticulous with our documentation, but by all means, have your lawyers investigate. While they do, I'll be focusing on completing Lazarus's clinical trials unless you'd like to explain to our shareholders why you're trying to oust the person who actually developed it. He stormed out of the lounge, leaving a weighted silence behind. Dr. Lang was the first to speak. I think we've all underestimated you, Elena, some of us for years. I thought about all the board meetings I'd attended quietly, all the times I'd listened to Alexander and others dismiss or minimize what my father and I had built. Yes, I said simply, you have. The question is, what are you going to do about it now? The weeks following my revelation transformed everything. News of Vega's true identity hit the tech world like a tidal wave. The media couldn't get enough of the story. The founder's daughter, who turned out to be a brilliant developer, the woman who had revolutionized AI while letting others take public credit. Ms. Novak, a journalist from Innovation Quarterly, asked during my first public interview, why maintain the deception for so long? Did he resent not receiving recognition for your work? I sat in my office, my father's former office, looking at his photograph on the desk. It was never about recognition, I said. My father and I understood how the tech industry would respond to a young female developer, particularly one related to the founder. We wanted our work to be judged on its merits, not clouded by prejudice or assumptions. The reporter nodded. And Alexander Grant? Sources say he's challenging the authenticity of your contributions. I smiled, thinking of Alexander's increasingly desperate attempts to discredit me. His legal team had spent weeks examining every line of code, every patent filing, every piece of documentation. Mr. Grant is entitled to his doubts, I replied. The code speaks for itself. What I didn't mention was the message I'd received that morning from Alexander's attorneys, quietly withdrawing their challenges. They'd found nothing because there was nothing to find. Every innovation had been meticulously documented, jointly credited to my father and me from the beginning. The real surprise came a week later when I arrived at the office to find Dr. Liang waiting with an unusual request. The development team wants you to conduct a code review, he said, looking slightly embarrassed. In person. They've been working with Vega's documentation for years, but now they want to learn directly from you. I spent the afternoon in our main development lab, surrounded by engineers who had once seen me only as the founder's daughter. Their respect wasn't forced or reluctant. It was earned, line of code by line of code, as I guided them through the systems I had designed. It all makes sense now, one young programmer said. The elegant solutions, the innovative approaches, they had your signature all along. We just didn't know what to look for. That evening, as I was preparing to leave, Dr. Liang appeared in my doorway. The board has been discussing Nova's future, he said without preamble. We'd like to formalize your position as CEO. I looked up from my monitor, where I'd been reviewing the latest Lazarus test results. And Alexander? He's resigned, effective immediately, Dr. Liang said with a slight smile. His final attempt to challenge your work backfired rather spectacularly. It turns out several of his innovations were actually incomplete adaptations of your prototypes. I wasn't surprised. Alexander had always been better at claiming credit than creating original work. There's something else, Dr. Liang continued. We've received inquiries from several major tech companies about potential collaborations. It seems Ian Vega's reputation carries even more weight now that people know the full story. I thought about my father, about our dreams for Nova Industries. What kind of collaborations? Stanford Medical wants to discuss implementing Lazarus in diagnostic training. Microsoft is interested in integrating our emotional context framework into their virtual assistant ecosystem. And NASA, he paused for effect, wants to talk about AI-supported decision systems for their deep space missions. I looked at my father's picture, remembering our late-night conversations about technology's potential to transform lives. Schedule the meetings, I said. But make it clear I'll be representing Nova as myself. No more pseudonyms, no more shadows. The next month was a whirlwind of presentations, negotiations, and media appearances. I spoke at technology conferences, gave interviews to major publications, and established mentorship programs for young women in STEM. The story of Ian Vega became a rallying point for change in the tech industry. Alexander, meanwhile, had vanished from public view. The last I heard, he was attempting to launch his own AI startup, but investors were wary. His reputation for appropriating others' work had spread quickly. 1 year after my revelation in the executive lounge, I stood on stage at the International AI Summit, preparing to unveil Lazarus's public launch. The audience was packed with industry leaders, investors, and media representatives. Artificial intelligence isn't just about computational power. I began looking out at the sea of attentive faces. It's about recognizing patterns others miss, about having the courage to pursue solutions that seem impossible. I displayed the first slide, a photo of my father and me in our basement workshop where we'd built our first neural network prototype. This is where Nova Industries truly began, I continued. Not in a corporate headquarters or university lab, but in a home workshop where two people dared to dream beyond conventional limitations. One of those people worked in the spotlight while the other created in the shadows. Today, we're bringing those creations into the light. The presentation was a triumph. Lazarus's capabilities exceeded even the most optimistic predictions. Our stock price soared, and more importantly, we were changing the future of human-AI interaction forever. After the presentation, as I was gathering my materials, I found a note that had been placed with my belongings. Alana, I was wrong about everything. I'm sorry. Alexander. I folded the note and put it away. His apology meant little now, but at least he had finally acknowledged the truth, that innovation doesn't care about age, gender, or appearances. It cares about brilliance, determination, and the courage to stand in the light. That evening, I sat in my home office, surrounded by the equipment where my father and I had spent countless hours working together. On my screen was the code for our next breakthrough, an AI system that could revolutionize climate science research. You were right, Dad, I whispered to his photograph. The world did need to know the truth, and now they do. I began to type, my fingers moving rapidly across the keyboard as new ideas flowed. But this time, I wasn't hiding behind a pseudonym or working in the shadows. I was Elena Novak, CEO of Nova Industries, writing code that would help solve humanity's greatest challenges. And I was finally, completely myself.